Russia making it easier for Vladimir Putin to use nuclear weapons due to, quote, Western actions related to the war in Ukraine. A top Russian official telling that to state media. This is Ukraine's President Zelensky acknowledges a, quote, most difficult situation in the eastern part of the country where Russian troops continue seizing territory amid Ukraine's ongoing incursion into Russia. Fred Pleitgen is out front.
Monday morning, right before dawn. A massive barrage of Russian missiles targeting Ukraine's capital. Air defenses able to shoot down most of the incoming rockets, but some clearly impacting inside the city. Russia attacking Ukraine's largest cities just as millions of children were set to go back to school for the first day of the new term.
Tonight, the explosions were very scary. I quickly ran to the bathroom. I could even feel the breeze from the impact of the explosion.
Ukraine continuing its own incursion into Russian territory in an effort to force Vladimir Putin's army to move units away from other front lines. And now, for the first time, CNN has obtained exclusive video showing how the Ukrainians first penetrated Russia's border. Elite mine-clearing teams secretly infiltrated and blew up minefields in the heavily fortified border area, clearing a path for the troops to get through. But Ukraine remains both outmanned and outgunned in most areas, increasingly relying on drones to level the battlefield. We visited the FRDM drone firm as they tested their new octocopter attack drone. Already carrying mock bombs,
it's RPG shot,
dropping them accurately from heights around 250 feet above ground. Realizing the enemy's advantage in terms of numbers of people, we cannot risk people, he says, so we are working harder to have even better drones. The drones, a major factor on the battlefields where Ukrainian forces are currently trying to stop sustained Russian advances in the east of the country. Russian President Vladimir Putin saying Ukraine's incursion into Western Russia will not stop his army from pushing forward elsewhere.
Their calculation was to stop our offensive actions in key parts of the Donbass. The result is known. Yes, of course, our people are going through a tough time, especially in the Kursk region.
But the drone teams say they are not done yet, working on ever more sophisticated unmanned aircraft to hit the Russian invasion force.
Fred Pleitgen is joining us now from Kyiv. And Fred, Putin just said in your report that his offensive in the east is not slowing down. What do the Ukrainians say?
You know, Brianna, the Ukrainians have acknowledged that one of the reasons why they sent their forces on that incursion into Russian territory was to try and make the Russians redeploy their troops from some of the front lines where they're putting the Ukrainians under pressure. And Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of this country, he came out today and said, yes, the Pokrovsk front is one of those places where they want to try to get the Russians to redeploy forces away from there and possibly towards the Kursk region. Now, Zelensky said today that he believes that that is something that still could happen. But at the same time, he also acknowledged that right now, for the Ukrainians, the most difficult front lines are in Toretsk, which is the area around Bakhmut, and of course, Pokrovsk as well. Brianna?
All right, Fred Pleitgen, thank you so much for that report.
Russian airstrikes have killed 3 people in Ukraine overnight. 2 of the victims, a mother and her 8-year-old son, were killed in Zaporizhia when a missile hit a hotel complex. 1 man was killed in the Dnipro region. Ukrainian officials say they shot down dozens of Russian drones. These new deadly attacks come the day after another wide-ranging Russian air assault, which wounded 4 people on the day Ukrainian children returned to school for a new term. Salma Abdelaziz joins me now live from London. Good morning to you, Salma. So what more can you tell us about these overnight strikes?
Yes, so as you mentioned there, Rosemary, yet another barrage of missiles and drones fired by Moscow towards cities and towns across Ukraine. It is this week that children began returning to school. So it is amid that environment that these explosives are raining down. The latest victims of this Russian assault is a family in Zaporizhia that were staying in a hotel. A mother and child, an 8-year-old son, killed. A father and daughter now wounded and in hospital. And as this assault comes in, you have to remember that there was a major uptick in Russia's attacks towards Ukrainian civilian infrastructure just a few weeks after Ukraine entered Russian territory with that surprise assault into Kursk. The stated goal of that, Ukrainian officials say, was to divert Russian forces away from areas where Ukrainian troops are outmanned and outgunned, particularly in the Donbass, a strategy that so far President Zelensky admits has yet to play out on the battlefield. Take a listen.
Yes, the Kursk operation is fulfilling its tasks. It is going according to plan. Regarding the difficulties at the Pokrovsk and Toretsk front sections, yes, we do believe that the Kursk operation could also influence these sections, and that there could be a lessening in intensity of fighting due to fewer Russian troops being there. However, as of now, we see that it remains difficult.
So President Zelensky still holding out hope that that could shift the strategy, but only the other day, President Putin was speaking on this as well, and he even said, I acknowledge that Ukraine was trying to divert me, trying to distract me away from the Donbass. That will not happen. I will not play Ukraine's game. And Ukrainian officials are admitting Pokrovsk is an extremely difficult front, that if things continue at pace, it could potentially fall in a matter of weeks. And in the meanwhile, you have all of these Ukrainian towns and cities, including Kyiv, of course, subjected to this massive barrages every morning by Russian forces. That's why Ukrainian officials are pleading with Western counterparts to allow them to use long-range missiles to strike deep inside the heart of Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign minister says that the restrictions put in place on those long-range missiles is like fighting with our hands tied behind our back. It was only last week that Ukrainian officials were in D.C. Pleading with the White House again for those restrictions to be lifted. But for the U.S.'s part, they believe that this strategy, the long-range missiles hitting deeper into Russia, will not necessarily shift things, that valuable assets are too far from the range of those missiles. Still, Ukraine continues that strategy just in other ways. They carried out their largest drone strike on Russia since the beginning of the conflict over the weekend. President Zelensky very much focusing on hitting Russia on Russian territory.
Salma Abdelaziz joining us live from London. Many thanks for that report.